Teaching is the Essence, compilation of books by Bhagavatam. So the duty of enlightened souls is to deliver the fallen ones. Vidura particularly came to enlighten Dhritarashtra and to give him a lift to the higher status of spiritual cognition. It is the duty of enlightened souls to deliver the fallen ones, and Vidura came for that reason. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13, next 14.
Next one.
Yeah, so I was just giving reference to that quote. So basically, Dhritarashtra was in a sort of compromised position because he was living in the palace of Yudhisthira, although he had tried to kill Yudhisthira and his 4 brothers. Or not personally, but he was happy about his son's program of doing that. So, but he lost his 100 sons, headed by Duryodhana in the war. And Yudhisthira was such a liberal personality that even though he was an enemy, he allowed him to live in the palace. But it was actually a very embarrassing situation for him. And he was basically just sort of maintaining his material existence, but wasn't doing anything to develop his spiritual life. And his body was gradually falling apart. And Vidura suggested that he leave the palace and seek enlightenment in the forest by meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he was fortunate enough to actually listen to Vidura and follow his advice and attain perfection, or at least the highest perfection that he could attain, considering he was envious of the Pandavas. So that was Vidura's great liberality, although Dhritarashtra was such a rascal his whole life. Sometimes when people do things bad, we think bad things about them and we want them to suffer. But the saints aren't like that. They still make programs to benefit people even though they're rascals. So that's the special quality of a saint, that he's not just into being vindictive and let the people cause suffering to others suffer. Who cares about them? But rather, every soul is part and parcel of Krishna. They should advance toward Krishna, and he is willing to give them advice in that direction, whether they're friends or enemies, as was being mentioned in that little piece that Ram Roy read this morning. So, continuing to read from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So we have the little description of Lord Chaitanya's Leelas.
Bro, I have a small question.
What's that?
Bro, you're saying that the saintly persons, all the people are rascals, I still want to save them.
Exactly.
But there's also a verse in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam where that they say that even a saintly person is happy when a scorpion or a snake.
Right.
So would that also refer to scorpion like a snake you are this offensive towards the devotees and have a bad attitude? What's the question?
Well, it's a very rare, if we consider Prabhupada's life, the only one who comes to mind is Mr. Nair.
No, Mr. N.
Mr. N. Okay. At any rate, he was an impediment to the preaching of Krishna consciousness in a big way, trying to take away that wonderful piece of land which Prabhupada wanted in Chuhu Beach. So, and he actually used his energies to steal basically the devotees' money, and so cause them all kinds of grief. So if somebody is on that level, we can feel hatred toward them. If they're that big of an impediment in the spreading of Krishna consciousness, they're taking away the devotee's property, blocking their attempts to preach Krishna consciousness. We can feel hatred toward that. But most of the people aren't that bad that we encounter. So, we're reading this description of Lord Chaitanya's life, and we have a marker that's right in the middle of a paragraph.
The introduction.
It's all over, huh?
It's all over.
We read the Shastra.
Wow. So we can remove this marker.
Right.
There's 60 days.
So then we'll so that we, in case we've developed a taste for hearing Chaitanya Leela, I have a little piece of Chaitanya Leela to read. So we can do that before the class, so people don't feel separation. So this is Odana Shasti, as Ram Roy Prabhu mentioned. Shasti is the 6th day of the moon, like Astami is the 8th day. And it's the day that Lord Jagannath gets his winter clothing. So there's one little Leela about that day in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Reading from Madhya Leela, chapter 16, beginning with text 77. Swarup Damodar Goswami and Pundarik Vidyanidhi had a very friendly, intimate relationship, and as far as discussing topics about Krishna, they were situated on the same platform. So they're eternal associates of Krishna, and Pundarik Vidyanidhi played the role of Radharani's father, so you can see he was a very exalted personality. And Swarup Damodar Goswami was Lalita and Krishna Lila. Pundarik Vidyanidhi initiated Gadadhar Pandit for the 2nd time, and on Odana Shasti, Pundarik Vidyanidhi saw the festival. Purport. At the beginning of winter, there is a ceremony known as Odana Shasti. This ceremony indicates that from that day forward, a winter covering should be given to Lord Jagannath. That covering is directly purchased from a weaver. According to the Archana Marga, a cloth should be first washed to remove all the starch, and then it can be used to cover the Lord. Pundarik Vidyanidhi saw that the priest neglected to wash the cloth before covering Lord Jagannath. Since he wanted to find some fault in the devotees, he became indignant. Continuing. When Pundarik Vidyanidhi saw that Lord Jagannath was given a starched garment, he became a little hateful. In this way, his mind was polluted. That night, the brothers, Lord Jagannath and Balaram, came to Pundarik Vidyanidhi and smilingly began to slap him. Although his cheeks were swollen from the slapping, Pundarik Vidyanidhi was very happy within. This incident has been elaborately described by Thakur Vrindavan Das. So, does anybody know any more details from the Chaitanya Bhagavat about that Leela?
About no, but my question is, do they always put starch in new clothing? Is that wool? I mean, like, said wool, right? It's wool.
Yeah, that's what Ram Roy mentioned, that it was wool. Here it doesn't. I don't think it says wool.
I think it would be wool, but my doubt is that I don't think they put starch in wool.
Right. Therefore, I can. That's not really my realm of knowledge. session. I have to ask somebody in the clothing
Sorry.
industry.
Please forgive me for trying to stump the speaker.
No, no worries. I'm not disturbed. At least it was relevant to the discussion anyway. So now we can go on to the verse for today.
Yeah.
Reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2. What's in Chapter 2 is entitled
Divinity and Divine Service.
Divinity and Divine Service.
Text number 16. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, what is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya?
All words is the Lord, and on a humble basis is the Lord.
To the Supreme Lord Vasudeva. Vasudev means the son of Vasudev, which is Krishna's father, and also refers to the all-pervading nature. Shushusho
Shradhanasya
Vasudeva
Katha Ruchi Syat Mahasevaya Vipraha Punyatirtha Nishevana Shusho Shradhanasya
Vasudeva Kataruchi Shanmahatsevaya Vipraha
Syanmahatsevaya Vipraha
Punyatirtha Nishevana Shusho Shradhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi
Syanmahatsevaya Vipraha
Punyatirtha Nishevana Shusho Shradhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Shanmahatsevaya Vipraha Punyatirtha Nishevana. So this is an important verse that many people want to contend.
Shushusho Shradhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Punyatirtha Nishevana
Shushrusho Shradhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syanmahatsevaya Vipraha Punyatirtha Nishevana Shushrusho Shradhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syanmahatsevaya Vipraha Punyatirtha Nishevana Shushrusho Shradhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syanmahatsevaya Vipraha Punyatirtha Nishevana
Shushrusho Shradhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syanmahatsevaya Vipraha Punyatirtha Nishevanat.
Shushushadhanasya
Vasudeva Gataruchi Sevaya Vipra
Syamahatsevaya Vipra
Punyatirtha Nisevanat.
Punyatirtha Nishevanat.
Anybody else?
Sushusho.
One who is engaged in hearing.
One who is engaged in hearing.
Dasya. Care and attention.
Vasudeva.
Vasudeva.
In respect to Vasudeva.
Respect to Vasudeva.
Katha.
Katha.
The message.
Message.
Ruchihi.
Ruchi.
Affinity.
Infinity.
Syat.
Syat.
Is made possible.
This may be possible.
Mahat Sevaya.
Mahasevaya.
By service rendered to pure devotees.
By service rendered to pure devotees.
Vipraha.
Vipraha.
O twice born.
Twice born.
Punitirtha.
Punyatirtha.
Those who are cleansed of all vice.
The cleanse of all vice.
Nishevanat.
Shushushadhanasya.
By service.
By service.
Translation. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Please repeat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So, Prabhupada makes lots of points here, so we'll read part of the purport and then talk about it and then read some more. The conditioned life of a living being is caused by his revolting against the Lord. There are men called devas, or godly living beings, and there are men called asuras, or demons, who are against the authority of the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 16th chapter, a vivid description of the asuras is given, in which it is said that the asuras are put into lower and lower states of ignorance, life after life, and so sink to the lower animal forms and have no information of the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. These asuras are gradually rectified to God consciousness by the mercy of the Lord's liberated servitors in different countries according to the supreme will. Such devotees of God are very confidential associates of the Lord, and they come when they come to save human society from the dangers of godlessness. They are known as the powerful incarnations of the Lord, as sons of the Lord, as servants of the Lord, or as associates of the Lord. But none of them falsely claim to be God themselves. This is a blasphemy declared by the asuras, and the demoniac followers of such asuras also accept pretenders as God or His incarnation. In the revealed scriptures, there is definite information of the incarnation of God. No one should be accepted as God or an incarnation of God unless he's confirmed by the revealed scriptures. So there's 3 paragraphs here. So this is the first one. So the topic of the verse is how by serving the great devotees one gains affinity for the messages of the Supreme Lord. So he's basically talking about who these devotees are, how that people, the divine and the demoniac, and basically they all, which category they belong into, is determined by their relationship with Krishna. If they're submissive to Krishna, they're divine, and if they're opposed to Krishna, they're demoniac. And Prabhupada makes the point there, it's not enough to believe in God to be divine. You actually have to follow the instructions of the Lord in the Shastra. Then you're considered divine. Although some people think they're godly just because they believe in God. And then he warns about the bogus incarnations of God, people who claim to be incarnations of God, but who are not mentioned in the revealed scriptures. Lord Chaitanya, in talking with Sanatana Goswami about the incarnations of God, he says that they're mentioned in the scriptures and according to their birth and their activities, and that's how you can ascertain who they are. Sanatana Goswami asked about the incarnation for Kali Yuga, and Lord Chaitanya said, well, you can find that out in the same way and from the scriptures, and then he changed the subject because he didn't want to get into it. So, of course, in America, there are not many people who claim to be incarnations of God. That's sort of an Indian phenomenon. But so it's good for us to know of the existence of these people and to be on guard about these people, and also and to protect other people from being misled by them. We can always remind people if somebody puts forward someone as an incarnation of God, are they mentioned in the scriptures as to their birth and activities? Because that's the standard. And then another standard that Prabhupada gave is they really have to lift Govardhan Hill. Krishna actually demonstrated he was basically, everyone accepts God as omniscient, all-powerful, and all-merciful. Practically every tradition accepts that. And Krishna actually did things where he demonstrated that. He demonstrated his omniscience. He so many times, like Arjuna got in a jam, there was 5 arrows that were destined to kill the Pandavas, and Krishna said, oh, go to Duryodhana and beg for the 5 arrows, because he was omniscient and he knew that Duryodhana had them. So many times Krishna gave his devotees advice to save them from danger. Because he was omniscient and knew what was actually going on. It's all powerful. Who can, even an adult would have difficulty lifting Govardhan Hill. What to speak of a 7-year-old boy? So this shows that Krishna is all powerful and all merciful. This Putana tried to poison him by encouraging him to suck her poisoned breast, but he gave her the position of nurse in the spiritual world, considering her motherly approach to him, wanting to offer milk. And so, who can be more merciful than Krishna, who took this ultimate demon who tries to kill God himself and elevates her to the position of nurse of the Lord in the spiritual world, her mother. So Krishna actually demonstrated the qualities of God. And also Lord Chaitanya, he showed his that he was all powerful and omniscient at different occasions. So, continuing, the servants of God are to be respected as God by the devotees who actually want to go back to Godhead. So that's mentioned in the scriptures. It's also mentioned in the by the acharyas, like we sing Shakshadiritvena samastra shastra uktastata bhavyate vasadi kintu prabhorya priyevatasya ande guru shri charanarvindam. Because the devotee is very dear to the Lord, he's respected, the same as the Lord. And by serving by getting the mercy of the devotee, we actually get the mercy of God. Such servants of God are called Mahatmas or Tirthas, and they preach according to a particular time and place. The servants of God urge people to become devotees of the Lord. They never tolerate being called God. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was God himself according to the indication of the revealed scriptures, but he played the part of a devotee. People who knew him to be God addressed him as God, but he used to block his ears with his hands and chant the holy name of Lord Vishnu. He greatly protested against being called God, although undoubtedly he was God himself. The Lord behaves so to warn us against unscrupulous men who take pleasure in being addressed as God. The servants of God come to propagate God consciousness, and intelligent people should cooperate with them in every respect. By serving the servant of God, one can please God more than by directly serving the Lord. So Krishna actually has so much affection for his devotees. He considers his devotees more dear than his own self. So by pleasing the devotee, the Lord is very satisfied because he has such affection for his devotees. The Lord is more pleased when he sees his servants are properly respected, because such servants risk everything for the service of the Lord and are so very dear to the Lord. So the demoniac people are always ready to put obstacles in the path of the devotees of the Lord, but because the devotees are very dedicated to serving the Lord, they push past these obstacles and have to tolerate so much, and the Lord appreciates this. The Lord declares in Bhagavad Gita 1869 that no one is dearer to him than one who risks everything to preach his glory. By serving the servants of the Lord, gradually one gets the quality of such servants, and thus one becomes qualified to hear the glories of the Lord. The eagerness to hear about God is the first qualification of a devotee eligible for entering the kingdom of God. So the pure devotees of the Lord, they're under the control of the divine nature. They're not puppets in the hands of the three modes of material nature. When we serve the materialists, who are under the spell of the material energy, we become under the spell of the material energy. But when we serve the liberated souls, we become liberated from the material energy. So this is actually our only hope of becoming liberated from the material energy, is to serve the people who are liberated. And the pure souls, they have great taste for hearing the glories of the Lord. And by serving these people who have a taste for hearing the glories of the Lord, we also acquire a taste for hearing the glories of the Lord. And by hearing the glories of the Lord, we're personally associating with Krishna. So we become more and more purified by that hearing. So the main example that comes to my mind is of a person who's attained this state of relishing to hear, based on serving the Vaishnavas, is the pastime of Narada Muni, which we'll hear later in this canto, but I'll just read it briefly now. So, sometimes in inspiring people in devotional service, we tell our How I Came to Krishna Consciousness story, hoping that it will inspire them to come to Krishna consciousness. So Narada Muni told Vyasadeva, his disciple, his How I Came to Krishna Consciousness story in the fifth chapter of this canto. So Narada says to Vyasa, "O Muni, in the last millennium I was born as the son of a certain maidservant engaged in the service of brahmanas who were following the principles of Vedanta. When they were living together during the 4 months of the rainy season, I was engaged in their personal service. Although they were impartial by nature, those followers of the Vedanta blessed me with their causeless mercy. As far as I was concerned, I was self-controlled and had no attachment for sports, even though I was a boy. In addition, I was not naughty, and I did not speak more than required. Once only by their permission I took the remnants of their food, and by so doing all my sins were once eradicated. Thus being engaged, I became purified in heart, and at that time the very nature of a transcendentalist became attractive to me." So basically he served these Vaishnavas, and he took the remnants of their food, and by being engaged in that way he became purified. O Vyasadeva, in that association, by the mercy of those great Vedantists, I could hear them describe the attractive activities of Lord Krishna. And thus, listening attentively, my taste for hearing of the personality of Godhead increased at every step. O great sage, as soon as I got a taste of the personality of Godhead, my attention to hear of the Lord was unflinching. And as my taste developed, I could realize that it was only in my ignorance that I had accepted gross and subtle coverings, for both I and the Lord are transcendental. So because as souls we're part and parcel of Krishna, we're also completely transcendental and have actually nothing to do with this material world, although we're presently situated here. So at a certain level one realizes that, and so Narada Muni is describing that. Thus, during 2 seasons, the rainy season and autumn, so apparently there's 6 seasons in the Vedic scheme of things, each 2 months long, so the rainy season and autumn is 4 months, the Chaturmasya. I had the opportunity to hear the great souls constantly chant these unadulterated glories of the Lord Hari. As the flow of my devotional service began, the coverings and the modes of passion and ignorance vanished. I was very much attached to those sages, and I was gentle in behavior, and all my sins were eradicated in their service. In my heart I had strong faith in them. I had subjugated the senses, and I was directly following them with body and mind. As they were leaving, these Bhaktivedantas, who were very kind to poor-hearted souls, instructed me in that most confidential subject which is instructed by the personality of Godhead himself. By that confidential knowledge, I could clearly understand the influence of the energy of Lord Sri Krishna, the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of everything. By knowing that, one can return to him and personally meet him. O Brahmana Vyasadeva, it is decided by the learned. Actually, this is like more or less the end of this story. So basically, after he heard these sages, he just traveled around the earth, hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, and the time came for him to leave his body, and he went back to, basically he said that he was basically got a spiritual body, and the next millennium he took birth as the son of Brahma in a transcendental body. So that all began with just hearing the sages and taking their remnants. And then this great taste, which he didn't previously have for hearing about Krishna, became manifest by their association. So we are hoping to be so fortunate by serving the devotees. When I was in London, I was talking, one devotee gave class whose service it was to drive Sheshika Prabhu around England. And he was saying Sheshika Prabhu would always be reading some Krishna Katha at every moment. like the whole way in the car from here to there. And he didn't let a moment pass without hearing from Prabhupada's books. So in this movement there are many people like that who have great taste for hearing and chanting. And by rendering service to these people who love to hear and chant about Krishna, we'll develop a love to hear and chant about Krishna. Like that Prahladananda Swami, he was just in such ecstasy chanting Hare Krishna in Union Square subway station. It was just completely blissed out, completely transcending the... For me, that's the most chaotic of all the subway stations.
Not more than nice, right?
Yeah, just because we're closer to the trains, you know? And the people just come up those stairs rushing by, and then the people from the L train rushing in the other direction. It's like, and their trains are louder, and they're closer, and they're... Yeah, and the announcements are louder also. So let me just look over the purport and see if there's any other things I really wanted to say about this. Yeah, so I mean, we can see if we're feeling that we don't have a taste for hearing, we just find some devotee who likes to hear and serve them. So it's pretty straightforward, actually. Yeah.
What's a qatar? You said a guitar?
Guitar.
Kata.
What's the word?
Kata means topics, or the message here, it says. Kata, yeah, kata is glorification, the pastimes or the instructions. It's all, Prabhupada says there's two kinds of Krishna kata, what's spoken by Krishna and what's spoken about Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita we have what's spoken by Krishna, and Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam what's spoken about Krishna. Of course, Krishna also speaks in the Uddhava Gita quite nicely. Additional things that he doesn't speak in Bhagavad Gita. So, like he describes deity worship in detail and like that. So and this Krishna Kata is experienced by the advanced souls to be ever fresh. Like Arjuna makes that point. I never tire of hearing, and that's also there in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Parikshit is telling Shukadeva Goswami to continue speaking, that he never tires of hearing these topics. And because we actually do have a relationship with Krishna, and we do want to hear about him and hear about his qualities. One of the nicest sections of the Nectar of Devotion is describes the 64 qualities of Krishna, and for every quality there's like a little story that gives an example of that quality. So, does anybody have any favorite qualities of Krishna?
Favorite what?
Qualities of Krishna.
We have, well, all
Let's say again.
all the qualities of Krishna are in the hand of the pure devotees. To a minuscule degree.
Well, you may say that, but according to the Nectar of Devotion, the first 50 qualities be attained by pure souls, and then there's 5 other qualities which Shiva has, and 5 more qualities that the incarnations such as Narayana have, and then there's a special quality only Krishna himself has.
Madhurya, Lila Madhurya, Prema Madhurya, and all those are the questions. Sorry.
I asked a simple question. I asked how many? 11 people. Say your favorite, one of your favorite qualities.
Krishna's sweetness.
Okay. Well, we're going to read about Krishna's sweetness.
Krishna's beautiful. Krishna's beautiful form.
Yeah. That's really his sweetness. So,
But
we're going to read that. Any comparison of the different parts of the Lord's body to different material objects cannot factually be a complete comparison. Ordinary persons who cannot understand how exalted are the bodily features of the Lord are given a chance to understand by material comparison. It is said that Krishna's face is as beautiful as the moon. His thighs are powerful like the trunks of elephants. His arms are like two pillars. His palms are expanded like lotus flowers.
His chest is just like a doorway. His hips are like dens, and the middle of his body is a terrace. And then the next one, then it talks about the auspicious characteristics on his body. This boy has reddish luster in 7 places. His eyes, the ends of his hands, the ends of his legs, his palate, his lips, his tongue, and his nails. A reddish luster in these 7 places is considered very auspicious. 3 parts of his body are very broad: his waist, his forehead, and chest. 3 parts of his body are short: his neck, his thighs, and his genitals. 3 parts of his body are very deep: his voice, his intelligence, and his navel. There is highness in 5 parts of his body: his nose, his arms, his ears, his forehead, and his thighs. In 5 parts of his body there is fineness: his skin, the hairs on his head and on the other parts of his body, his teeth, and his fingertips. The aggregate of all these bodily symptoms is manifest only in the bodies of great personalities. And then, of course, the third one also relates to his sweetness, which is pleasing. Beautiful bodily features which automatically attract the eyes are called ruchira, pleasing. Krishna possesses this attractive feature of ruchira in his personal features. In the 3rd canto, 2nd chapter, verse 13 of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, there's a statement about this. The Supreme Personality of Godhead in his pleasing dress appeared at the scene of the sacrificial arena where Rajaswiya sacrifice. All important personalities from all different parts of the universe had been invited to the sacrificial arena, and all of them, upon beholding Krishna there, considered that the Creator had ended all of his craftsmanship in the creation of this particular body of Krishna. It is said that the transcendental body of Krishna resembles the lotus flower in 8 parts, namely his face, his 2 eyes, his hands, his navel, and his 2 feet. The gopis and the inhabitants of Vrindavan used to see the luster of lotus flowers everywhere, and they could hardly withdraw their eyes from such vision. It's described that the Krishna was so beautiful that the gopis were just so disturbed with the blinking of their eyes that they wanted to curse the Creator for creating such poor eyes, that they, for being so thoughtless and foolish that he made eyes that blink, that impede the enjoyment of the beautiful form of Krishna. So Krishna's beauty is actually very attractive, and we're, to the extent that we're not attracted by the beauty of Krishna, we're very unfortunate. Yes?
I believe the exact Sanskrit word for it's not the second, but it's 1/1700th of a second.
Oh, really?
It's
Wow.
called a tuti.
Shruti, yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's inconceivable that somebody can be so beautiful, isn't it? Just that short duration, not seeing feel such lamentation. So because the gopis are highly elevated in pure devotional service, they can appreciate the sweetness of Krishna to a greater extent than we can. But the more we engage in devotional service, the more we'll become pure and we'll appreciate the truth. We say that Krishna, when we give the definition of what Krishna means, we say Krishna means all attractive. But the problem is that although Krishna is all attractive, that we're not all attracted. We still are attracted to things that actually have no direct relationship with Krishna. that are just insignificant displays of his illusory energy. We are more attracted to some of these manifestations, unfortunately, than we are the beautiful form of Krishna. So, but that's due to our impurity. And by performing devotional service, we become more and more attracted to Krishna. And by serving the great souls who are more attracted than we are, we get a boost. The other way that's given to become attracted for people who are too proud to serve the great souls is that Rupa Goswami says that that our condition where we can't appreciate we can't relish the sweetness of Krishna is like jaundice, because we're covered by avidya, and the cure for this avidya is to engage the tongue in glorifying Krishna anyway, even though initially we don't have a taste for it because it's covered by the jaundice of ignorance. So if we force ourselves to glorify Krishna, then we'll develop a taste for it. And therefore, every day, for 16 rounds, we force ourselves to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Waiting for that day when after 16 we don't throw our bead bag down and do something else. But we continue chanting with greater and greater ecstasy. Anybody have any questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Regarding this about developing attraction to the topics of the Supreme Lord, in the 11th canto, chapter 20, there's two very nice verses in that regard. Text 8 and 9. Yadichaya matkatadau jata shraddastu yah human na nirvinno nati shakto bhakti yogosya siddhidaha. If somehow or the other, by good fortune, one develops faith in hearing and chanting my glories, such a person, being neither very disgusted nor very much attached to material life, should achieve perfection through the path of loving devotion to me. And the next verse is quite famous. Tavat karmani kulvita na nirvidyeta yavata matkata shavanado va shraddhaya va na jayate. As long as one is not satiated by fruitive activity and has not awakened his taste for devotional service by Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, one has to act according to the regulative principles of the Vedic injunctions.
Is he saturated? Saturated in devotional service?
Satiated.
Satisfied.
Satiated.
So it means satisfied. Yeah.
Which verse is that?
11, 20, 8 and 9.
Oh, 11.
Pure devotional service surpasses knowledge and detachment. That's the chapter name.
Yeah, that's
So it's like literally, even unless we're completely filled with the topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we still have to act according to some regulative principles, like trying to avoid very intimate association with the opposite sex and things like that, because we still have not awakened our taste. But the aim and goal is to awaken the taste.
Yeah, but see, when the people have the taste, they spontaneously act properly. Basically, they spontaneously engage in devotional service, and which completely purifies their hearts. So they don't need. The whole point of the Vedic injunctions is to regulate your life so that you move in a positive spiritual direction. But people have a taste for devotional service. All they do is devotional service. So they automatically purified, which is the point of the Vedic injunctions anyway. So they transcend them, because they've surpassed them. So, but basically it's described that the devotional service is progressive. There's these 9 different stages, and Ruchi is the stage after Nishta. So you can't really expect to be experiencing Ruchi if you haven't experienced Nishta. You can't experience Nishta until an artist get down to a certain level, so they're almost reduced to nil. That's not part of the process. And our devotional service can be Vaishniki, Nishta, steady. We can be Nishta. But so both those two methods, by forcing ourselves to hear and chant, although we don't yet have a taste, and by serving people who do have a taste. Those two methods, being a taste, and then we'll be spontaneously interested in chanting about Krishna. And we won't, we'll go from one act of devotional service to another act of devotional service to another act of devotional service. There won't be gaps in between where you aren't doing any devotional service. And opening the door for mind to stepping. You had a question. You had a question?
Yeah, I have a question. You talked about how being constant meditation of the pure devotee, you get a boost. Like, I was wondering whether if somehow or rather the pure devotee thinks of you even for a second, whether you get protection or you get mercy, or how does that?
Yeah, even if the desire, even if the devotees think you, or if they desire, like there's I think it's in the Nectar of Devotion how somebody attained perfection because Narada Muni desired, they attain perfection. So just like there's somebody in Hartford who has some health condition, and they asked Ranjana Swami to pray for them, and it really improved. Like had cancer and it went into remission or something, something substantial like that. I was saying, well, his prayers are very powerful because I became a devotee because of his prayers. So just one time I was entering the temple and San Diego, just about ready to offer obeisances, and before I could even bow down to Srila Prabhupada, Kavichandra Swami came up to me and said, we have to desire that people become Krishna conscious. So many people became Krishna conscious simply because Srila Prabhupada desired it. And I lived in San Diego over 25 years ago, but it was such a striking thing for somebody to say, you're just walking in the temple and suddenly somebody says that to me, It's like, wow, But it's actually a fact that we have to desire that, that people become Krishna conscious. Like Prahlad Swami asked him, I asked him what to say to the people to distribute books, and he basically said, it doesn't matter so much what you say, but we actually have to desire that the people stop, we have to desire that they, give a donation, and we have to desire that they take a book. So the desires of the devotees are very powerful, and if the devotees are thinking positively about you, therefore it's good to be nice to the devotees so they're more likely to think positively about you. So I guess we should end here because it's about time for fasting. Did anybody have any other questions? No? That's good because my knowledge is very limited. So.
I have one.
What's that?
How do we get to the platform Nishta? How do we get to the platform Nishta?
I heard one devotee chanting the Maha Mantra in Java, and he was chanting Hare Nishta, Hare Nishta, Nishta Nishta, Hare
Really? How supernatural. Well, the idea is that performing the bhajana kriya nicely, the heart becomes purified. And that's and by avoiding by not maintaining attachments material things, even after understanding some of the instructions.
It's all doesn't matter.
Sometimes we have a choice. We can do a material thing and not do a material thing. Sometimes we're just so covered over, we do the material thing anyway. And sometimes we're a little, more in the mode of goodness, and we actually can restrain our senses. So if we actually do restrain our senses, when we actually have enough strength to do so, then we become stronger. Whereas if we don't, then we remain conditioned by it. So whenever Krishna gives you the good intelligence to act in a spiritual way, if you do, then you become stronger at controlling your senses and engaging with emotions.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and the other thing is by associating with people who are steady. That's the advantage of this ashram. You can always find people in the ashram who are more steady than we are, isn't it true? Whoever we are, there's somebody who's more steady than we are. If not in everything, at least in some things that we could benefit by becoming more steady. Some people are more steady at being on time for Mongol arati. Some people are more steady at being on time for greeting the deities. Some people are more steady at being on time for Harinam. And those are just a few things, Some people only eat the right amount of prasadam, and other people eat too much. So we can associate with the people who eat the right amount. All kinds of opportunities are given of good association in the ashram. We're very grateful to Ram Roy for establishing this ashram. Ram Roy ki jai.
Jai.
Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada.
Ki jai. His Grace Krishna-kripa Prabhu ki jai. Ki jai.
Bhagavatam ki jai.
Panchakalpatra Vishya Kripa Sindhu Vya Patitanam Pave Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha.